Life is full of detours. There are times in our lives when we find ourselves on a journey with loss and grief. In Detours, New Directions, you will hear true stories of people who have faced the challenge of major detours in their lives. They reveal how these painful journeys hold the possibility of hope and inspiration.
I never felt so alone, so abandoned by God, by family, by her for dying.
You can have 1 minute where you're fine, the next minute you can feel like you're crazy, 1 minute you can be happy, the next you can be a puddle of tears.
I learned that grieving is a personal matter and that people grieve in different ways, in different manners, and one of the most important things I learned was that there is no timetable.
There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's not a train coming towards you either.
I'm one of a family of 9 children. I was, I am the second to the youngest girl. Yeah, and so Herbert, my brother Herb, was the youngest boy. Herb and I are 9 years apart. He was a rascal. He loved the ocean. Anything to do with the ocean, he was there. He started to experiment with drugs when he started working in the hotel industry. It just led to, things that he did that the family just tried to get him to go and seek help. But like most addicts, if they're not ready, they're not going to go.
I mean, I've been making cookies since 1970. I've been eating them since I was 12 years old, 1948. So, and I loved chocolate chip cookies, so it couldn't be anything else. I started Famous Amos, 33 years ago, 1975 in Hollywood, California. And I'd had a few experiences before then. I'd been in show business for 14 years. 7 years as an agent with William Morris. I was first agent to book Simon & Garfunkel and Marvin Gaye and the Supremes, and worked with a lot of rock acts during the 60s. And I got just tired of doing that. And there were no other opportunities, and so I left. I made a commitment to open one store, not a chain, not to be famous, not to be some big mucky muck, but just to sell cookies and have some fun and make a great product. And I proceeded to do that, and I'd never done it. And in 5 months, I was open. I was selling cookies and having fun and doing all this stuff. And that went on for a long time. Things began to crumble, I guess, if we're talking about cookies. And I didn't lay a strong foundation. I didn't have a good management team, and things just were not working out well. And so I started selling off parts of the company because I had to do something to keep it afloat and to keep going. And every time you sell off part of something, then you have less, and you lose more and more control. And after a while, I had no control at all with Famous Amos. I lost the company completely.
So one evening I get a phone call, and it's a phone call nobody ever expects to get from themselves. My daughter got into an accident, and I had to fly to see her. She was on her deathbed, and so I got to see her before she died, and it's the most horrible experience. She was in a car accident. She was a pedestrian in a car accident, and I just never thought that would happen to me. My family, my daughter, she was only 22 years old. So it's the last thing you expect. That flight home was the loneliest. I flew home by myself, and it was the loneliest experience I've ever had.
I started selling off parts of the company because I had to do something to keep it afloat and to keep going. And every time you sell off part of something, then you have less, and you lose more and more control. And after a while, I had no control at all with Famous Amos. I lost the company completely. There are stages that you go through, or that I went through, And I mean, at first, you know, you're kind of embarrassed. You know, you feel like a failure because you've started something and you got other people to invest in it and other people to be a part of it, and it's not continuing. It's not being successful. So you feel as if you let down folks and friends too, because it was friends that put up money for me to start Famous Amos. I've never been one to wallow in misery or sadness, because what I've discovered is all that does is make you sadder. You know, it's like being in quicksand. If you fall in quicksand, now you can go down like that, but if you kind of observe and just be as composed as you can and not panic, because when you panic, that's when you sink. But if you just kind of, you know, look around and see what's going on, there might be a branch or something over there that you can grab a hold of to pull yourself up.
And so I came home, and how do you tell your dying dad that your own daughter died, that his granddaughter died? It was a very difficult time. I could do nothing. I slept every day for a month. You know, I just couldn't do laundry. I couldn't cook. I would take a bath, because I like to take baths. I would take a bath, and I would forget whether I had taken a bath or not, because the tub was dry. So I didn't know how long I sat there, or if I had turned on the water or not. I was so out of it. I used to think, this can't be happening to me. But it was, and I lived 5 minutes at a time. That's all I could handle. If I could live through the next 5 minutes, I'd be okay.
My wife died in April of 2004. In 2001, she had an injury. And that injury just wouldn't go away. It was a back injury, and from 2001 to 2004, we went to 20 different doctors in Hawaii. We actually went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And although they could find signs of back injury, they couldn't pinpoint it, so they wouldn't be able to operate. And so their best advice was pain management. And pain management was very difficult for my wife. She eventually had a morphine pump that was implanted in her, but she couldn't handle morphine. It just made her sick and not herself. And so things got worse. As the years went on, she said that her hip felt like it was being pulled away from her body. And no matter what we did, no matter who we saw, nobody had an answer, nobody had a diagnosis, nobody had a cure, and nobody would touch her surgically. So she started talking about suicide. And of course, you know, I was trying to find any way of not having that as a solution. And it just kept going on, and she got more serious. And now that I look back, I realized that she was preparing me. You know, like this was the only answer that she saw. She got me to promise her to be her ally, to be her support, and not try to fight it, and just to be there with her, for her. And until the day that she finally did commit suicide, you know, that's what I was. I was her support.
Myself and 5 other women on Kauai go out and work in partnership with our police and fire departments and go directly to the scene of an accident, like a suicide, and begin immediate support to the surviving family members and represent hope, and letting these families know that they will survive, that they will find their path, their grief journey, and that they need to dive into those feelings, that there's no way around it but through it, but that they will come out the other end, that they will find their gifts, and they will slowly begin to heal and change from focusing how their loved one died to how they lived.
You know, you often wonder, was it something that we as a family didn't provide you? Because here's a family of 9, you know, and for him to go astray, what was it? And there wasn't any one thing, he said, that the family did. It was just him. He had everything. He had a great job. He had a beautiful family.
Part of what happens when someone dies is we get a videotape that's popped into our head and we look at over and over and over because we're trying to make sense of something that's never, ever going to make sense. That part of the task of healing is to make peace with not ever having the answer to the question why.
So he entered treatment in 2004. So he was given a choice, enter treatment or go to jail. And I went before the judge and I told the judge, I said, incarceration is not always the answer. I know my brother. He's a good man, just misdirected. And rehabilitation is what he needs.
I remember I went to a grief workshop. It was the first grief workshop I went to. My friend Felicia said, you have to come to this. You really need this. And I was like really skeptical, and I didn't want to get out of my apartment. I didn't want to move. And she called me every couple of weeks, and she said, it's coming up pretty soon, and this would really benefit you. And I go, yeah, right. But anyway, so I paid my money and I went, and I remember that I could do nothing. I participated in nothing. I just sat in a corner, and that's all I did. And I was surrounded by people that were just like me, grieving. We all had different stories. Somebody had died, and some of them were joyful, and some of them were really sad. The next year it came around, and I decided not to go to it. The third year it came around, and I wanted to go. They canceled it. It was, and I was really, really sad. I was ready. We found the money, but we were $500 short. We couldn't raise that last $500. And so we came up with this product line so that we could sell something, so that we could raise money. And we did it. We put on this workshop, and it was really good. It was the best I've ever been. It was sad, but I felt so involved. It was something I needed, and I knew that I was helping other people because this is exactly what I needed. We made it happen the way I wanted it to happen, so that it would satisfy my hurting soul. And I was really still hurting after 3 years. And we've done it every year since then. And it's been really, really good. It was really good to have this workshop and to put it on and to be part of something bigger than myself, bigger than my pain.
We know that people who are traumatized oftentimes want to be able just to have someone hear their story, talk story, or share your story to someone else. Each time you share it, you get a little bit of that pain from the inside out. And that's very important. And if you don't have somebody around you, journal. Go ahead and write it in the journal. Because as you can write in the journal, you can do that any time of the night, any time of the day, and be able to write out how you feel, what your thoughts are, your emotions, anger and fear. And then we also encourage people to some way celebrate what they had with the individual. So being able to remember those things that are treasured rather than just looking at the pain is very, very important. So sometimes I'll tell people, if you want to function, you want to be able to cry, give yourself an hour a day. Set aside an hour a day, put out the pictures of the person you love and mementos, and spend as much time as you want to in that hour crying. Then something unusual happens. We put out the photos and so forth, and they don't have the need to cry. The reason is, now that they have permission, they don't have to. And they find that the rest of the day they can basically function better. So I actually give people an hour a day just to grieve. and they can go into a room where they set up things, they can have something with them. But I find it incredibly healing to have a time each day that they can grieve.
Something always happens, and it has always happened. And I believe that for as long as I'm breathing, something will always happen.
Today, Wally Amos is living his cookie dream once more. He owns and operates 2 chip and cookie stores in Hawaii. He and his wife started their own nonprofit called Chip and Cookie Read Aloud Foundation, part of their children's literacy advocacy work. He also travels the world as a motivational speaker, inspiring people with his story and his message of hope.
Sometimes you'll reach a dead end, and you will not be able to figure it out. So when you can't figure it out, then when you reach the end of your rope, let go. Because there is an answer there, and you're so busy searching and looking for it that you can't see it. A detour is just another opportunity. That's all it is. It's another chance. You've been given another opportunity to reach your destination, to succeed at whatever it is that you want to succeed in. So it's not the end.
So I think in a real sense, detours in life happen whenever there's a loss. When we lose someone very special to us, hey, that interrupts our schedule. But in some ways, that detour can actually help us to ponder life, ponder what we have, ponder what we've lost, but ponder what we still have not lost, and to be able then to start to look at how that detour actually is a gift.
She left me the gift, and that gift was a file. And in the file were all the things to do, people to contact to donate her body, letters to be sent. She had already written out letters to people, and I was to mail them out. She left books for me to read. She left therapists, and she did prepare me. It took me a while to get things done. The funerals and all those services, she actually planned some of it, and I just sort of followed what she wanted. Donating her body was also one important thing that she wanted to be done, so I followed through with that. And she also left me instructions to feed the cat and take care of the dog and all those kind of things, which I did. She even, once we were talking, and she even gave me a list of people that we knew that I might hook up with, but I didn't want to put any energy into that. I just said, oh no, let's not talk about it. But I mean, that's who she was. She was, caring for me until the end.
So I asked them, I appealed to them to let him go into rehab, a residential program. So they sent him, and he was agreeable. He was agreeable, and it was a 2-year residential program, and it's a Sand Island Treatment Center, and I thank God for them. Those people there, the counselors, they've walked that walk, and that's why they're so effective, is because they've been there. He learned a lot of tools when he was in the Sand Island Treatment Center, and one of them was to keep a journal. Unbeknownst to me, after he passed away, I found in his backpack a few journals that he had continued. And so I read his journals. Each night I would read a few pages, and yeah, I cried. I really cried. But it was also a way for me to know what was in his na'au, what he was thinking, what was in his pu'uvai, in his heart. During the Christmas holidays, we went to a plant fair, and I was going to purchase haliconia plants. And he said, well, don't buy the whole plant, just buy the roots, and I'll plant them for you. And so we did. So I bought a whole bunch of haliconia and ginger and brought them back. And that day he planted them. But there was one that had fallen out of the bag, and I found it 2 months later. I found root 2 months later, but it was all shriveled and there was nothing to it. So I threw it away. But Herb did not want to give up on it, and that day he was cleaning out and he went into the trash can, saw it, and he took it out. And he says, no, it's still good. It's still good. It'll grow. Let me try. And he just kept watering it every day, 3 weeks. 3 weeks before he passed away. We were in the yard again, and he yelled out to me, he goes, hey, Bill, did you see my plant? And I said, yeah, I saw it. And he goes, no, have you seen it lately? And of course I hadn't, so I went up there and I looked at it. And it had already grown about 2 feet. The ones he had planted in December were huge, but it had only grown about 2 feet. But out of the top, the stalk, was a tip of a red flower. And I looked at that and I was like, oh my God, it's blooming. And I just smiled and he looked at me. He says, I told you. See, I told you it was still good. And we just laughed, you know, we had a wonderful day. And I didn't realize how profound that was for him until I found his journal. And as I was going through, you know, each day, and it came to that day and he wrote in it. He said, spent quality time with my big sis in the yard. Showed her my plant, and she was so happy to see the flower. You know, she was happy. And he says, now I know I was the withered root that was lost. But my sisters didn't throw me away. They removed my imperfections, planted me in new surroundings, and they watered me with their kindness and fed me with their laughter. And now I grow in their love. When I read that, it was so bittersweet because it was so beautiful. But then I realized that he was the root. He saw himself as that root. But was so happy that his sisters were there for him and helped him emerge through his darkness. So I cut the flower and I put it on the altar next to his ashes. And as I told the story, I told everyone that single red heliconia that you see, that's the flower for the plant that he grew. And so every day that I see a flower, you know, blooming in my yard, I smile, I think about Herb.
Life is full of detours and full of new directions. We offer these stories as a bridge for understanding the detours in our lives.
And I feel like I'm detouring here and detouring there, and I'm coming along, but there is some general movement. And although it's not a straight path, one detour leads to another detour, and it keeps me moving, and in general, it keeps me moving forward. And that's my journey.
If you or someone you love needs assistance, call 211 for help.